strategizing for renewed growth. I strongly believe that this team is very well placed in the sense that as a body and as a business, we need to build back and salvage some of the losses meted to us by the pandemic. I'm very confident that the thoughts and the fellowship that we will be having here today would go a long way in reviving our strength and energies into building back our businesses. In the last 15 years of my life and career, I have been actively engaged with private schools, both locally and internationally. My understanding of and appreciation of private schools business stems from various domains and levels of the private education sector and management. Let me take this opportunity to appreciate these domains and also to mention to all of us so that we'll understand the perspective in which I am going to do this presentation. Way back in the early 90s, as a young boy teaching in one of the schools in Sunyani, a private school, as a JSS mathematics teacher, there are a number of things that I learned as a private school teacher then. And also as a trainer, training over 700 private schools across the nation, for which I can see so many faces of proprietors and school owners that have come to trainings that I've facilitated. And also as a financier, I mean working in a bank, purposely and specifically assigned to work with private schools in giving loans to private schools, assessing their needs, and partnering with IDP Foundation into giving loans to these private schools. And also from the perspective as a school director and an owner of a school, and also as a consultant and a researcher working with private schools. I believe with this knowledge and understanding of private schools, I will try to sort of share my thoughts and understanding to the landscape of the private schools in Ghana. It is very important, as we all know, that the significance of the private school in educating the Ghanaian child has never been in doubt. And in all the speeches that we have heard, there is a resounding proof that private schools play a significant role in educating the Ghanaian child. There are a number of studies that have proven or shown that private schools play a significant role. The question that we need to ask ourselves is that, have stakeholders really come to terms with this important role? This is a question that we need to think through. Research has shown that more than 23% and even over since the early part of 2011, 2014, that over 23 and even beyond, private school students were educated in private schools. In the same vein, even in secondary and in JHS. In 2011, Ministry of Education gave a statistics that there are over 5,292 private schools, private education schools, training our children. And with a growth of about 6%, more than 6%, it shows that in 2021, there should be more than 10,000 private schools, known and unknown, or covered and or uncovered. A study conducted, there are a number of studies that have been conducted in Ghana, and one prominent one that I want to share in brief with all of us is one done by one Professor James Tooley. It's a very popular research in, I think, 2015, 2005 and 2007. And This study targeted 4 countries, sub-Saharan and also in India. And there are very interesting findings that I believe when we share, or I mention some of them, it will put more light to the discussion that we are going to have. Few of them I would want to mention. The first findings was that higher academic achievement in private schools were attained than government schools, with the research done in Ghana in the Ghana district, with over 779 less privileged schools. And again, private schools cost significantly less than government schools in teacher cost. Better pupil-teacher relationship, ratio, in private schools than government schools. More teaching in private schools than government schools when the researchers called into the schools unannounced. The understanding of many people, stakeholders and non-stakeholders, has been that there is this erroneous assumption that private schools is the preserve of the elite and the middle class, which of course a number of studies have shown that private schools is not only the preserve of the middle class and the elite, but there are a number of poor people located in several communities where even government schools are not, that children are being educated. If you go around, I've done a number of studies, visiting schools, talking with a number of schools across the nation. It will amaze you the kind of fees that some schools charge in training a Ghanaian child. Very, very interesting. And it is something that we all should look at. Businesses all over the world have been so affected by COVID-19. In Ghana, schools were the most affected, with almost 10 or 11 months of school shut down. Business shut down. The effect was so enormous to the extent that there were serious revenue cuts, accumulation of losses. So many schools calling and telling us that even banks, there is accumulation of interest to the extent that the businesses are being swallowed. Increased teacher turnover, effect on staff morale and proprietor confidence was so huge to the extent that so many proprietors had to give up. Today, you would see so many schools closed down as the effect of the COVID-19. A number of schools losing a number of children and people, dilapidation of assets and resources in the schools, increased costs of production or operation due to COVID protocols, and even also cleaning in schools. Many of the schools were so weedy that when schools reopened, they couldn't even get money to weed the school and to clean the schools. This was the effect of COVID to the businesses that we have. The burden of uncertainties and anxiety on proprietors was so enormous to the extent that so many proprietors had to give up. So many of the schools closed down, and this was the effect of the pandemic on private schools. Private schools continue to experience these challenges, and these challenges worsened the plight of proprietors during the pandemic. And these challenges continue to be with us, and they will continue to be with us until together we strategize and make sure these strategies will help us build our energies and have a renewed growth in terms of the business that we are having. Let me share one study that IDP, the country director, is here, conducted just recently, and there were interesting findings. When 150 private schools, low-fee private schools, were surveyed, these were the findings, few findings. 88% of them said that resources are not available. Only 12% of them said, oh yes, we have some resources to help us work. In terms of profitability, only only 33% of the schools surveyed said that they make some little or marginal profit. Others, almost 42% said we do not even know whether we make profit or not. With 25% saying that we barely break even. There are other challenges that confront private schools in terms of poor school infrastructure, lack of access to finance, and if they even have access to the finance, high cost of funds, lack of government support, and high teacher turnover. With the biggest need of private schools being lack of infrastructure, proprietors or school owners are confronted with a very big dilemma. And anytime I engage private schools or private school owners, it's so interesting when we begin to discuss it. And this is the biggest dilemma of a private school owner. Not able to generate enough funds, but also with the fear of losing people or deter access should you increase fees. This is the biggest dilemma of school owners. And this dilemma continues to be with us until we strategize very well days and a number of weeks. One of the biggest things that I've observed is that private schools are not managed as businesses. They are only managed as an education institution. In trying to renew our strength for growth, one of the things that I'm going to entreat with our proprietors here in Guarded is that private schools must be managed as businesses and not only as an education system. I keep on saying and telling the proprietors that I've engaged that it is the business that must lead for the others to follow. If the business principles and standards do not lead, the school will fail. And that is one of my biggest observations going around schools all over Ghana, from the northern part of Ghana to the southern part of Ghana. Schools are not run as businesses. And what do I mean if I say schools are not run as businesses? There are a number of issues that I want to bring out. I have always said that the psychology of managing school as a business goes beyond any other business. The reason is that the parents that we engage are so complex. If you are dealing with somebody's daughter or somebody's child, the complexity surrounding it goes beyond somebody entering your shop to just buy a bottle of Coke or whatever. You are training somebody's child, and there are so many complexities that makes private schools, the psychology surrounding private schools, a complex one. For this reason, as proprietors, we need to do more than simple or other businesses, what they are doing. If you want to enter the heart of any parent here and take advantage of the child, it is one of the principles that I say when I am training. If you want to enter the heart of any parent, go through the child. And it is a psychology that proprietors, we must learn. And once we are doing business, whether we like it or not, our Auntie Hilda said that, yes, indeed, it is a hard truth, but we are running a business. And we must understand that fact. If you don't run your schools as a business, proprietors, I'm afraid will continue to have these challenges. Improving on communication, customer dealing, best principles, having budgets, having your cash flows being managed, having proper records and banking systems. If we do not do that, post-COVID, we will be consumed. And as proprietors, these are the thoughts that I want to share with you. There is one thing that I always say as I engage proprietors, that even the business units within our schools must be self-sustainable. Our tuition, our canteen, our busing, our books, all that. Each of the business units must be self-sustainable. What I have noticed is that So many proprietors run bus system, but they take money from other side to support the bus systems, and such business units are not sustainable. And as businesses, we need to be mindful of that. Ensuring proper governance systems, having board of directors in our schools who will direct our schools. These are all things that we need to implement. Having a solid HR policy where it takes charge of your planning of your staff, your recruitment, your monitoring, your retaining of your staff, and all that. All these are very critical issues that as businesses we should be mindful of. Another critical thing that we need to also know is that as proprietors, there's one critical thing that is eating up schools: ownership and business entity separation conflict. Ownership and business entity separation conflict, where because proprietors establish their own business, they are not separate from their businesses, and so they put their personal finances and their school finances together. You wouldn't know whether you are making profit or loss, and so that is one of the reasons why schools are so challenged. And so this is how I put it: the ownership and the business entity separation conflict. And until we resolve that, schools will continue to be challenged. Again, in strategizing, having a clearly defined business concept. I have noticed that you visit schools and schools do not have a business concept. Are you only working on a business concept as a crutch or as whatever? Schools do not have business concept. If you do not have a business concept with your clearly defined vision, there's no way as a school you will be successful. Remember, you are running a business, not only an education system. And these are very serious principles that in trying to renew strength for growth, we need to be mindful of these things. Again, one critical issue that have been coming up is that most of our schools are able to collect only 60% and below of their school fees within the term that they operate. With all the 700 schools that I have related with, and even beyond, few schools are able to collect 60% and above. And it is less than 20% of the schools that have engaged. Only 60%. So assuming you are to collect, let's say 40,000 within the term, you collect only 60% and below. Some collect as low as 40%. And what happens is that when the school resumes, if a parent has not been able to pay, he moves the child from one school into another school. Because we are not united, because we do not have a common front, parents take advantage of us. And these are issues that in trying to build back our cash flow and build back our businesses, we need to be mindful of. It is very critical. My engagement with the schools is that schools and proprietors and school owners must be disciplined, in quotes, not disciplined as we all know, but I mean discipline in terms of business. So many people are pastors and they own schools. People come and say, "Oh, pastor, I'm very sorry, I cannot pay. And for that reason, this and that and that." And we allow them. When their monies come, they move their children to the other schools. And these are critical issues. We need to be disciplined and run the schools as business. You cannot enter somebody's shop and say, "I'm buying something next 2 weeks or next 3 weeks, I'll come and pay." And until as businesses, we do these principles, put them and make sure we have this level of discipline, we cannot build back our businesses and we will continue to suffer, and the post-COVID effect will consume us. Again, schools must be driven by a vision. What was the vision by which you established the school? Your concept and the market you operate will be driven by the vision that you have as a proprietor. And that must be clearly defined. When it is clearly defined, these things will be done. Again, proper accounting and record monitoring of our systems. So many schools do not have accounting system. I mean, not the accounting systems that we have, But the simple ledgers and the simple cash flows and the simple tools that we use for our collection for us to be able to determine whether at the end of the term we were profitable or not, schools do not have. And if you do not have, you wouldn't know whether you are making profit or loss. And you would be bringing monies from your cocoa farm that on other investments into the business. Until those investments are exhausted, you will never know whether you are making profit or loss. And by doing this recording, you also prevent leakages. As we sit here, our schools are going on, unless those that are vacated. And it is very interesting doing online studies. Please, in strategizing, let's start building our technologies. Appreciate them, ability to appreciate them and understand technology. So that in the event that any of such things, God forbid, but we should prepare. We should prepare. And finally, build collaboration and partnership. One thing that I've seen among proprietors is that there is no collaboration and partnership. Without collaboration and partnerships, we cannot move on. Even among ourselves as proprietors, yes, we are competitors, but in a global world, we are not. In the sense that there are so many children out there who need our service. And if we begin to prepare ourselves very well, the market is so huge. And in building partnership, there are very wonderful associations, very wonderful foundations, like IDP Foundation has done a lot in Ghana in partnership with Sinapiaba, have done a lot in supporting a number of schools in Ghana. It is very important. One of the critical things as strategies in building back is to make sure you adopt the culture of savings. Adopt the culture of savings. I know, as I said this, people are saying we do not even have enough to pay our teachers, and you are talking about savings. Savings is a culture. And please, if we do not build that, adapt that culture, in times of difficulties, we will be hurt. In most trainings that I've had, there's one critical study that I always have with my trainees. That there are three types of savings. What we call the savings up, the savings down, and the savings through. The savings up is the very savings that, assuming we want to build a school, 4 classrooms of 100,000, and we want to save 5 years to be able to build. By 5 years, if cement, the cost of cement is 20 cedis today, by 5 years' time, the cost of cement will be like 50 cedis. Is that right? So the cost of a 4 classroom block today, in 5 years, will be like times 3 or 4. As proprietors, we may not be able to have the opportunity to save up for 5 years. It is always better to have a positive credit line. Have a good institution where you will partner with. I mean a financial institution. That you can take the 100,000 today, build your 4 classroom block, then begin to pay down as a savings down. And they are the same. You would say you pay interest. Yes, it's the same. The inflationary effect and the interest are the same. And the advantage is that you have the building at year 1 to enroll more children. These are the analysis that I believe as proprietors. And so always have a good credit line. And you can have a good credit line when you associate yourself with an institution where you will deposit your money and eventually you can take a loan. Finally, I would want to recommend IDP Foundation and Sinapiaba. They have been doing wonderful work in Ghana, and I am a testimony of it. More than 1,000 schools have benefited. 1,000 private schools have benefited from these institutions, and their collaboration is wonderful. As I end, I want to leave this with proprietors. For these strategies to have its maximum effect, proprietors should be courageous, should be firm and not rude in dealing with your customers, the parents. Because when it is about people's children, they behave irrationally. You know that. When it is about people's children, sometimes they behave irrationally. Some of their comments, the parents. So we need to be firm and not rude to our customers. Proprietors should work with the concept being driven by a clearly defined vision. Proprietors should not fear to make mistakes. Proprietors should change strategies if they are not working. And when we are able to do this, we'll be able to build back our losses and regain the glory that we have. On this note, I will